Melbourne and Sydney really are the Tokyos and the Londons of the future. And we need to start thinking that way. How are we going to handle such a high population and maintain this fantastic livability we have? Well, we're not going to do that without being smart about it.
We really need to think about comprehensive, integrated strategies for bringing together jobs, housing, transport infrastructure, and really the kind of communities that we want to be in. Melbourne just hit 5 million, which surpassed the forecast for where they would be. Sydney, of course, has a similar population size, and Melbourne's expected to surpass Sydney in the coming decades. Additionally, I think in less than 10 years, the forecast is that we're going to add another 1 million people to the Melbourne population.
When we talk about change, it's not just the community and the social infrastructure that needs to create change. It's also a body of professional practitioners that we've built up over a very long period of time to operate in a particular way. We are in uncertain times moving forward and are having to think about how we can be a lot more adaptable, a lot more resilient and a lot more flexible and responsive to these pressing situations.
I'm not sure that any of us want to live in a dystopian nightmare, sort of Blade Runner-esque future city. And so getting that balance right between the culture, the ways that people live and move around a city, as much as what the physical infrastructure offers, I think is going to be very important in the future.
The interesting thing about Australia's population growth is that the majority is actually coming from overseas migration. So in Melbourne, we are looking at just about 2/3 of population growth coming from overseas, and in Sydney, that's upwards of 3/4.
The focus of our work is really to understand how changing patterns of immigration affect the social, cultural, and economic life of the communities in which they settle. The current drive to promote regional settlement has some merits. The trick is that we can't push people there. So instead of thinking about how we construct policies to ensure that migrants go and remain in a particular area and then police that, I think a better approach would be to really put a lot of thought and planning in developing regional areas that are attractive to migrants and, in fact, Australian-born, to get that energy in business and in industry that will see those populations in the regional areas be sustainable and maintainable over time.
It's by building on the city rather than rebuilding it that we think the way forward. The boundary of Melbourne is already big enough so that it can actually accommodate the increasing population.
When we initially arrived in Australia in 2011, we were fascinated by the authentic character and atmospheres of the light industrial suburb. There's a whole range of different types of industrial buildings. The modest utilitarian and the iconic industrial building. And these industrial buildings are being interspersed with workers' cottages, which together form this authenticity. But more important for us was the discovery that the industrial suburb is intact and fully operational. So there are a number of manufacturing businesses, bookbinders, furniture makers, carpenters, and they form a colourful coalition next to newer industries which have recently moved in.
90% of manufacturing firms employ fewer than 20 people. So what we need to look at and understand is that with the rise of the maker movement, we can use that as a platform to help support these traditional manufacturers in food, in apparel and textiles, and look at these together more comprehensively for economic development policy that can support this activity together. We need to stop rezoning inner-city industrial land for mixed use and residential development. We need to preserve industrial lands and help to support that diverse job and business mix that we can have in a center city. We need to look at those cross-subsidy programs that allow higher-paying uses to support manufacturing activity. And I think we'd start looking at other programs towards subsidizing the development of more affordable workspace and changes in our zoning categories to allow for recognition of new work patterns, new business patterns, and so forth.
I think the biggest thing we can learn about the past, which we need to learn for the future, is during the 20th century, we've been building infrastructure thinking that the more we build it, we'll be catering for growth. In practice, the problems we have today will have tomorrow. We'll always be resource constrained. We will always have political barriers and be conservatism when we need big changes. Unfortunately, our politics has focused around building big stuff. And often programs which can divert travel and reduce travel have not been favoured because they're not as politically nice. We need to retrofit and repurpose the existing infrastructures to enable them to perform better. Great examples of this are things like the Westgate Bridge, which is now handling much more demand than it was ever thought of in the beginning. So engineers and scientists are having to work out new ways to repurpose that bridge, to re-engineer that bridge while it's working.
I like the term future cities more than smart. I think a future denotes a smart city inherently because you have to be thinking forward, and that is a part of where the systems thinking lies at the moment. So smart, I think about it as smart individuals trying new things, learning new things, sharing those opportunities in an effort to move forward.
By 2050, the older population in Australia is going to look very different to what it does now. We're going to have a lot more people actually living in their homes longer. However, we'll also have a large number of people that do need care. There'll be a large number of people with early onset or progressive dementia. A number of physical ailments means they simply can't be looked after. Smaller family sizes mean there's even more people living alone. Currently, technology is not serving older people anywhere near as well as it could do. So we now have the capability to instrument a home, which could have a range of sensors, movement sensors. Are you using the tap to hydrate yourself? Are you taking medication at the right time? Are you communicating with friends, family, carers when they expect you to? Are you partaking of normal daily activities that you'd normally expect to, or is something wrong? So we have the technology to do that. Are we doing it? Almost nothing. By 2050, we're going to have a lot of challenges in the ageing Australian place. And to be honest, I'm not very confident at where we're at now that we're going to be able to tackle those challenges. We're going to have to step change up the rate of technological innovation.
We've been running a series of surveys with local governments, asking a range of questions about where they are at in their smart city journey. One of the questions that we ask is, what are the major impediments for you progressing? I thought the best answer that we had was from one council that said, our inability to imagine the future. The good news is that last year, the conversation was still very much focused on the should we do this, and why should we do this, and what are the benefits. This year, we're seeing a greater shift towards how do we do this, and also a move to how do we do this in a way where we better collaborate.
So people have I think, quite understandable and sensible degree of skepticism over what technology can do, might do, and maybe what it shouldn't do. How do we keep humans in control? How do we leverage the technologies in safe ways and appropriate ways rather than scare people that, robots will take their jobs, cars will run them over, the home will do something terrible to them in the future if we instrument it in the wrong ways or whatever. Those are actually all justifiable fears because it all could happen. And it's on the shoulders of technological experts like myself and teachers like myself to make sure the next generation of technologists are aware of these things and are cognizant of them and take due diligence of those when they're building these solutions.
If we have the political will to say people come first, that cities are about people, not profit, we can create cities that create equitable opportunity for everybody.
As academics, we have the great opportunity to influence the next generation. Our students, they are the designers and critical thinkers of tomorrow. And we can already observe a change in attitude of this young generation.
Many of the new ideas we have for smart cities are forgotten humans. We need realistic solutions that recognize everybody in society, not just the elite, not just the young inner city elite either. It's everybody. We should be smarter than that.